Let's discuss those key mistakes. What were those mistakes and what did you learn from those?
Biggest one on that was man, a lot. Again, we'll get into the laundry business later, and part of what is really making things work well for us is we've gotten very, very good at site selection.
So, how's the life on the franchisee side different? What are the pros and cons of owning a franchisee versus having your own team?
Now, if you have a franchisee and you're really growth minded and you're pouring into that, you can do well. I know people that have done really, really well as franchisees of KW. I know people that have done well as franchisees of some.
They are investing into homes or whatever, but laundromat is like a ticking time bomb, and a lot of people are sitting on the fence. I wish I invest in a laundromat, but either they have not taken that step to do it,
Yeah.
or they just don't know about it. So how do we go about that?
Yeah, well, let's just break it all down. Most of the mistakes I made in that business that led us to shutting it down were real estate related, but at the time I knew nothing about real estate. Life is a series of ebbs and flows. This is what I know, right? You're never, it's like a mountaintop. You're never at the peak for very
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bigger Life Podcast. Today we have awesome guests from Fort Worth, Texas, Ken Wimberly. He is the owner of multiple laundromats, has investments into commercial real estate as well as some development. He also had a previous interest into Keller Williams franchise, and we'll talk about it. Hey Ken, how are you doing today?
long. Really great. Thanks for having me, Ray. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks for joining the show. So Ken, give us a little background about yourself before you got into real estate, and of course, we'll talk a lot about real estate.
Yeah. Man, I'll dial it all the way back. I'll go all the way back and give you a little background. For when I was 12 years old, I watched a movie, and the movie was Taps. Taps was actually Tom Cruise's very first movie, and it was about a military school. And that movie inspired me to really want to go to military school. So I went to my mom and said, "Hey, I want to go to military school." And um, 6 months later, I was at Kemper Military School as a 12-year-old boy, and I spent the next 4 years of my life there. With a great deal of discipline and structure and organization, which was very formative for my life as I look back on how I am today. That started at my time at Kemper. And so I graduated at 16 years old as valedictorian from Kemper. And then I went to college, went to Texas A&M for a little bit, then to community college, and then ended up at TCU in Fort Worth. While I was at TCU, the U.S. went to war with Iraq for Gulf War One, and so I enlisted in the Navy, served a tour in the Navy, toured around the world, flew around the world, did a bunch of different things, and we got out, finished my college, and from there I got into the investment. I've always been a spreadsheet junkie. I got a finance degree with a real estate emphasis from TCU, and as a spreadsheet guy, so I interned with a group during college doing insurance and investments, and went to work for them for a couple years outside of college. Then I got an entrepreneurial bug. I opened up a pizza restaurant. I'd actually been a pizza delivery driver in college for this company that was just amazing product. And I said, look, they didn't have a franchise. And I really want to open one of these. So I did a licensing deal with them, opened up a restaurant. This was 2000. And man, interestingly enough, most of the mistakes I made in that business that led us to shutting it down were real estate related. But at the time, I knew nothing about real estate, and certainly nothing about commercial real estate. And so I made some really key mistakes in that business that just caused our overhead to be super, super high from day one. And by the time we really got our legs underneath us, we felt so buried with debt that we were just overwhelmed. So actually, through that, I filed bankruptcy. Went bankrupt in 2001. It was a really, really challenging time in my life. And however, shortly thereafter, but that's what brought me to the real estate business. So I filed bankruptcy, worked in the restaurant business for another year as a general manager of a Cajun concept called Razoo's. And then I kind of realized one day my ex-wife, my wife at the time, and I was like, man, I am working 70, 80 hours a week. I was making $50,000 a year as a GM of this restaurant chain and commuting probably 45 miles each way to and from work, and sometimes going there twice a day as the GM. I was like, this is not going to work. as a we were pregnant with my first child, and I said something's got to change, and that brought me to the real estate industry. So, 2002, I made the shift from the restaurant business to the real estate business, and I've now been doing some form of real estate in my life for the last 23 years.
Kudos to you. Of course, I have great respect when people, anytime I hear somebody has to go through bankruptcy and they bounce back, it's a very, very, very tough phase. And bouncing back from that and putting yourself together, because it's not just a financial mess that you go through, right? It's a whole lot of more than financials. And putting yourself together, your mental state together, emotions together, and of course your finances together. eh, Great respect, man.
It hits, when you go through something like that, it really hits, it did for me, your feeling of self-worth, right? It's like
Yeah.
I felt like I let everyone down, not just myself, my partner, my customers, my employees, I just let everyone down, and it was tough. Tough to go through that. And I had a similar experience. I didn't go through bankruptcy, but I got divorced in 2008, and that was right in the middle of the financial crisis. We had a short sale on our home. We lost all of our equity in that thing. Got divorced. I mean, again, I was like, again, hitting kind of rock bottom there, and
Hmm.
at least at the time I was already in real estate, and I knew how to make income. So I was doing that. And so I could pull myself out a little easier at that time, but still life is a series of ebbs and flows. This is what I know, right? You're never, it's like a mountaintop. You're never at the peak for very long. You're climbing, or you're ascending or descending in life. And that's okay. That's just kind of how things go. And um, I've learned that you don't get or you shouldn't get too excited when you're at the peak, and you shouldn't get too despondent when you're in a valley, because it is cycles. And as long as we're advancing each day, doing something to get us to the next step, that's what it's about.
Yeah, the more static you are, the better it is because that stabilization, as you said, not getting excited and not getting too disappointed, that's the key to life. And that's about bigger life, right? So once you have attained that, then really it doesn't matter.
There's a lot of truth to that. You find a lot of peace in every day and a lot of joy. If you can find peace and joy in the everyday situations, I had a friend over last night. We hosted a big crawfish boil. We do it once a year for clients, friends, affiliates, vendors. A big crawfish boil at our home, and 100, 200 people, depending on the year, will show up. And I had a friend over last night I hadn't seen in, well, since 2008, actually. We talked about that last time I saw him was 2008. He's over, and it's like, wow, man, your house is so beautiful and everything looks so great. And this house is like, so this is an old house. I live in a 1940s built house, or it was originally built in the 40s, kind of expanded on that time. Yeah, we've done a great job, beautiful backyard. But compared to when I knew that guy, we both lived in what would be called mansions at the time. Like, we were over leveraged, had these huge houses, and it was just crazy. And you come to appreciate, as I've come to appreciate, the smaller little things, right? It's not,
Simplicity. Yep. Yeah,
simplicity is
so
a
true.
beautiful thing. And the more I simplify my life, the better it gets.
Let's discuss about the key mistakes. Since you mentioned you made some key mistakes related to real estate, let's discuss those key mistakes. What were those mistakes, and what did you learn from those?
Biggest one on that was, man, a lot. Again, we'll get into the laundry business later, and part of what is really making things work well for us is we've gotten very, very good at site selection in the laundromat business. And so I will say, in my real estate issues with the pizza business was ultimately a site selection issue. We wanted to be close to a university. The pizza chain I worked at was close to TCU, the university I was attending, and I was like, the model worked really good. So we wanted to, hey, let's do this. Let's roll out a plan where we open up stores near universities and do this kind of thing. However, so we went into the shopping center. It was close to the university. It checked that box, but this was in an L-shaped shopping center, and this location was at the back of the parking lot. So while it had frontage or visibility on a very well trafficked road that goes right in front of the university, overall visibility was not great because it was at the back of the shopping center. Not only that, The space at the back of the center, they had a space at the front of the center, but it was, I don't know, it was small, 1,500 feet. And we thought, oh, that's too small for us. That's too small. Hindsight, had we gone with that 1,500 feet, we would have probably killed the business, right? It was up front. Our overhead would have been low. Would have been a lot of things. We'd have been growing out of that, and it would have been great. But also hindsight, I'd probably still be in the pizza business. So I guess things work out the way they're supposed to. But I say the space that we ended up taking, it was almost triple the size of that. It was 4,500 square feet. And the landlord was unwilling to divide the center. I didn't know how to negotiate or perhaps get him to do that kind of thing. And the realtor I was using, who to his credit, very much said, Ken, he said, I'm a residential realtor. I don't know anything about commercial, but he's a friend of mine. I was like, look, just help me. And so he did what he could to help me. He didn't know. So, like, what are the mistakes? I didn't have really great representation. I didn't know what I was doing. I took this space that was, 2 to 3 times the size space I needed, which then caused more rent, more electricity, more overall utilities, more equipment, more furnishings, more employees, more everything, right? So all of our monthly expenses were just snowballed from the get-go. So those are
Walk us through your experience with Keller Williams. So you bought a franchisee. So was that like a split second moment, or it was well thought through? So how did that go, and your journey with Keller Williams? And I know that you have exited out of the business now.
Yeah, I exited out of the franchise business. I'm still affiliated with,
Yeah.
with KW from our brokerage business, but we joined up in the KW ecosystem. Keller Williams started a commercial division in 2008, KW Commercial, and I got recruited into that company. By God, it's actually before we got on this call with you and I got live, I was on the phone call with this guy who's now become one of my very best friends. And but he recruited me into the Keller Williams world in 2009 to come help launch KW Commercial in Dallas Fort Worth. And I did that. I helped bring people in. I built my own team. I built a very successful commercial real estate team. We had a focus on net lease investment properties. So we were doing investment sales, mostly single tenant, some multi-tenant, and some medical office. And so I built a very successful team, and it became the number one team in KW Commercial. And so through that success is what opened the door to becoming a franchisee. And so because I was inside the ecosystem, I was building a strong successful team, I got invited to open up a KW franchise. And in fact, what they asked me to do was go to a location that had a KW office, but it was failing. And it wasn't a franchise. It was a satellite of another office is what it was. They said, hey, we want to turn this into its own franchise. It needs to be grown. It had about 20 people, 18 to 20 people when I took it over. And I came and opened that franchise, and we built that to over 100 people. It became the number one brokerage company in Abilene, Texas. It was in Abilene, Texas, and number one by far brokerage company across all metrics in Abilene, Texas. And then from there, we expanded into San Angelo, Texas. Some of our agents had ties into both markets, and San Angelo was ripe for opportunity too. So we expanded in San Angelo and built that also into one of the top companies in San Angelo. And I put really great leadership in place there over time. It was a struggle to that's like in so many businesses, right? People is the key, getting the right people. And so as I finally got the right partner, the right person in place to run that business, it really started to thrive. So, but then I just said I eventually transitioned out of that business. I had a focus on other things, and so I've recently kind of exited that business.
Since we talked to a lot of like brokers, so let's talk about a little bit about life on the franchisee side, right? So how's the life on the franchisee side different? What are the pros and cons of owning a franchisee versus having your own team?
I would skew towards having your team. I think the economics many times are much better than having your own team. Now, if you have if you're a franchisee and you're really growth minded and you're pouring into that, you can do well. I know people that have done really, really well as franchisees of KW. I know people that have done well as franchisees of some other real estate franchises as well. But I will say that like a good friend of mine is a franchisee of another brand, and he kind of tells me all the time, he's like, yeah, Kenny, he's like, I kind of break even on that. Some years I'll do well, but his real opportunity and real cash flow comes from his brokerage team. If you're running a successful brokerage team and you have your model cued in right, you can do quite well financially in that side. As a franchisee, sometimes, like I know in the KW ecosystem, sometimes as a franchisee, we do really, really well. But there's also times you can have really, really lean times. Last couple of years in that model has been lean times. But what you can also do when you're a franchisee, there's ancillary services that you can get involved with. Think title, mortgage, property management, kind of partnerships, that kind of thing. So there are other revenue generated opportunities that you can get into that door opens as a franchisee.
So as a franchisee, the revenue the franchisee makes is basically the commission split that goes to the office, right?
That's right.
So, but as a team, you retain the other side of the commission split, which goes to the broker or the agents.
Yeah. Yeah. And with a lot of these franchise models, certainly with KW had they had what they call a capped model, which they were really a leader in. Now that's much more common, but that was not common when KW kind of was a trendsetter with that model and thought press, having a cap model, meaning once you had earned a certain amount of income and you had paid your split on that income, you get capped and go to 100% over a certain level. And then you're just paying some transaction fees and basic office fees beyond that. But that was a very attractive model for someone that's running a big, successful business. And so, again, on your team, you got that cap in place and you can kind of negotiate a team cap and team split. And KW was pretty innovative in evolving with that. And so as a team, you could do very, very well. Again, you got to have your model set up right with your agents. And we talk for days about what those models look like and how to do it appropriately. But I run the gamut of things that worked or didn't work. But if you have your model set up right and you get the right kind of people on your team, you do very well.
Are you working independently now, or do you own a team now?
My wife and I have a really small team these days. Again, I'm focused on the laundromat business. I've got some investments that we do, but I don't do a lot of brokerage. I have a partner. He's actually with another brand that I refer a lot of my stuff out to because he's just outstanding person. I've known him for a bunch of years and trust him inherently, and he's a go-getter. He gets stuff done. And so with most of my things, I'll manage the client relationship. But once we get into an actual deal, kind of get into that, I'll pass it on to this guy, and he'll really work the deal and make stuff happen.
Let's talk laundromats. Why laundromat?
Laundromats were a solution to a real estate problem. That's the short answer of how we got into it.
I read about that actually, yeah, but I'll let you speak about it.
Yeah, well, I say the full answer on that is, again, I mentioned that I had the KW franchise in Abilene, Texas. One of the things I observed in Abilene was that real estate prices were really attractive compared. So Abilene, we'll call it a secondary, tertiary market compared to these primary markets like Dallas, Fort Worth, and the suburbs of Dallas, Fort Worth. Real estate in Abilene was priced really attractively. And so I started looking for investment opportunities in Abilene and found a shopping center to buy. So a partner and I were in escrow to buy a shopping center that had vacancy in it. And so I was visiting with potential tenants to fill our vacancy. And I was actually at a real estate show and visiting with a bunch of tenants, handing out flyers for this property. Hey, we're buying this property. You're looking for tenants that might need these different kind of profiles of the center. And I came across a laundromat guy at one of these centers, and so he evaluated. I gave him a flyer. I said, "Let me get back to you in a couple of weeks. We take a look at it. I'll run some numbers and get back to you." And he calls me. He says, "Ken," he said, "this is like a perfect center for a laundromat." And I said, "Okay, that's interesting. Tell me about that. Why is it a perfect center?" And so he was going through the reasons demographically, the apartments, the competition that was around there, et cetera. He said, this is really an ideal location. And I said, well, that's great. What do you need? And he was kind of telling me the lease terms and the rate they can pay and the things that he needed. And I'm like, oh my God, you are the perfect tenant for a laundromat. And I'm like, well, excellent. I'm like, let me send you a lease. We'll get you signed up and get you in the center. And what I came to realize through that is he wasn't an operator of a laundromat. He actually, I knew nothing about the industry. This is how little I knew at the time. And he actually was a representative for an equipment manufacturer. And so he said, no, Ken. He's like, we don't do that. He said, let me put you in touch. He said, how this works is there's a distributor. The distributor works with operators, and the operator will be the one to sign your lease. And so anyway, he put me in touch with the distributor, who really didn't give me the time of day, which is ironic because they've now become dear friends of ours. But at the time, I was just some random guy in Abilene calling, asking, hey, do you have an operator for my center? They're like, dude, quit bothering me. So because I couldn't find an operator, I asked my partner, I said, what if we looked at this for ourselves? What if we became the operator? And now, mind you, I did not need another business. I had a KW franchise. I had a real estate brokerage team. At the time, I was getting ready to launch a mobile app. We can talk about that if we want to. That was a whole 4-year journey of launching this mobile app and trying to grow and scale that. And then there's the pinch of laundry. So I didn't need another business on my plate, but we did want to fill the center. And we said, let's just at least explore it. And so we were talking to that guy that had told me what a great location it was. And then we were talking with the distributor. We started researching the industry. So we spent about a year, my partner and I, researching that industry. And during that year, we both realized, hey, we have a lot of irons in the fire. And honestly, neither one of us are great. We don't feel like great operators. We feel like we're great leaders. We needed someone to be in great starters of things. If you look at my profile, I'm a great starter, but not necessarily a great finisher. And so we're like, let's go find an operator if we're going to do this. And so through that got us into business with another guy that I've known for many, many years. Actually, he came to KW Commercial as the number 2 guy at KW Commercial Corporate, and then ended up becoming the number 1 guy out there. And so I've known him for a lot of years. I served on his executive council, and I thought, man, if there's never opportunity to get in business with this guy, I'd love to. And he had left the corporate world, was running a real estate team on his own. So I went to him and said, hey, would you like to look at this opportunity with us? And he said yes. And that led to the 3 of us exploring the industry for about a year and saying, look, there's really great profit margins in this business. It's serving a need that is really, really a need that's out there. And what we learned through the exploration of the opportunity was laundromats, where they're located. They go in really impoverished neighborhoods. I'll say they're on average $50,000, $40,000 or less household income. And in those areas, many, many, many families. In fact, there was a research project done that came in and said that 1 in 300 households in that income demographic has a book for their children to read. A book. Like, I don't know if you can see behind me. I got books everywhere. Books everywhere. My kids have books everywhere that they read. I mean, I'm so passionate about reading. It's so integral into my development as a human. And so we said, look, let's use this and make an impact. Through that, we learned about there's something called the Laundry Literacy Foundation. So we partnered with the Laundry Literacy Foundation for our first store. We put a children's play area in, TV up that plays family friendly movies where kids can sit, they can read, they can enjoy themselves, they can play games while their parents do a necessary chore. And so we said, look, let's make an impact with this business if we're going to do it. And that's so that's a little bit of a longer story, but that's how it got us into the business. And then as we were getting into the business, we're like, let's make an impact. If we're going to do this, let's make an impact with it. And that's what's really caused a lot of fire in our bellies and a passion.
This is good because anytime you can have a business, and business is for profit, but at the same time you can make an impact on the livelihood or touch people's lives. It's great, right? So that's like best of both worlds.
It is. It gets, at least it gets me and my partners excited about getting out of bed in the morning, about this business, about expanding. So we're able, to help in multiple fronts. Okay, number one, Skylar is the guy we brought into this business. Is His name is Skylar, and Jason, our third co-founder, has taken more of an advisory role these days, and Skylar and I are running the business. Skylar's our CEO, and I'm I'll call it chief visionary officer and head of growth. And Skylar was a West Point Army Ranger, and he'd served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Just a soldier, absolute leader of men, one of the best leaders I've ever come across. And then I served in the Navy for one tour. So we're both passionate about helping veterans. So when we're able to help, we can help our customers with a valued need that they've got. We can help our team members that are working in our stores. We can help our team members in teaching them leadership and entrepreneurship. We've been in the entrepreneurship world for 20 years. And so we teach them about leadership and entrepreneurship. We can help veterans to get into this business. We're passionate about that. So we're now starting to franchise the business, and we're really focused on bringing in qualified veterans that want to get into the business. We're working on special financing for them, helping them get in the business. So we're able to help them. And so, yeah, we're able to help a lot of different angles and ways, and it gets us very passionate about it. And we're able to help make an impact in childhood literacy. That's a big one for us.
All right, let's do a deeper dive into the demographics side of the thing. So if I'm looking, let's suppose, or maybe before we go into this thing, let's talk about financials first. So how would you, because you are franchising as well, right?
Yeah.
So what does it cost for an average laundromat? What kind of revenue expenses are we talking? What's the net profit are we discussing about? What's the cap rates and things like that? So you come from financial and real estate background as well. So let's paint the picture here. Let's say I don't know anything about laundromat,
Yeah.
and a lot of people in my real estate group, and I hear that, right? They are investing into homes or whatever, but laundromat is like a ticking time bomb, and a lot of people are sitting on the fence. I wish I invest in a laundromat, but either they have not taken that step to do it,
Yeah.
or they just don't know about it. So how do we go about that?
So yeah, well, let's just break it all down. So the laundromat, if you look at the laundromat industry in general, it's a little opaque in terms of super accurate numbers, but it's estimated that there's between 30 and 35,000 laundromats across the United States. Okay. The vast majority of those are um, older units, and they're mom and pop units owned by an operator that owns one or two units. And many of those are what my friend Brian Grell has coined they're called zombie mats, right? They're these places that are just, I mean, like if you go Google laundromat on Google Images, you're going to see a lot of these just old, dingy, kind of gross laundromats. And so that's what a lot of the industry is. What we're building with these new modern facility formats, our existing stores are between 6,000 and 7,200 square feet. Our target going forward is about probably a 3,500 to 4,500 square foot location. What we've learned is we're starting to dial this in. And so, and with those, we'll have, between 80 to 100 plus machines in there. And so if you're looking at what the cost is to get into that, it's going to be roughly a million to 1.3 million to open up one of these stores. The majority of that cost is in equipment. The laundry equipment is highly capital intensive. It lasts a long time. It's going to last you, it should last. The industry will tell you, I say the industry, the equipment manufacturers will tell you it'll last 10 years. It's what the lenders will tell you too. I would suggest to you that it's probably going to last 15 plus years on that equipment if you really take care of it, maintain it, and keep it up to date. So, but that equipment is an expensive capital investment. And then I'll use $1 million number. If you built $1 million store, you're probably gonna have $700,000 in laundry equipment, and then $300,000 in all of your other FF&E, tenant finish out, that kind of thing. So it takes about $1 million to get into it. Part of the good news is that $1 million, you can depreciate all that, and you can do accelerated depreciation depending on how tax code continues to go on some of those. So if you're a high income earner, you can actually save quite a bit of your initial capital investment over a few years with depreciation benefits on it. So again, it takes about $1 million to get in. We'll use the million as a round number. It can be a little more or less than that, but with $1 million, you can finance generally 70% of it. So on the $1 million investment, $300,000 equity component of that, $700,000 you can finance. The general debt terms with this industry is a 10-year fully amortizing note. So it's unlike like a real estate deal where you might get 20 or 25-year AM on this kind of thing with maybe a 5, 7, or 10-year kind of refinance position on it. This is a 10-year fully amortizing. And so, which is great that it's paid off in 10 years, but the flip side of that is it's a heavy principal and interest payment on it. But so that's the upfront cost. Revenue on it. On our stores, what we've been able to do, we've got 3 open right now. We're in permit to open our 4th, and I'm working on lease negotiations and site purchase on a couple other sites for our 5th and 6th. But with our 3 existing stores, our revenue is currently we've been open. Our longest store has been open 6 years, and our next 2 were like 4 and 3 years. Okay, it's kind of where on average on where we're at with our stores, and we're ranging between 55,000 and 90,000 a month in revenue on our stores. The 90 we just recently started hitting with one of our stores. It's a phenomenal store. Our EBITDA margins are ranging from 30 to 45% EBITDA margins. I would generally tell people conservatively 25 to 35% EBITDA margins, but we're once you're above a certain level of revenue, many of those kind of like your rent's fixed, your labor is variable, and it kind of caps out a little. The labor that can do a $50,000 a month store can also do a $70,000 a month store, right? And so the labor becomes fixed at a point. Your utility costs, of course, with every turn, you got utility costs going on in there, but a bunch of those big costs are your rent and your labor, and those are somewhat fixed after a period. And so every incremental dollar you have goes straight to increased EBITDA margins, and so that's kind of where we're at.
In laundry business, a lot of payments are split into credit card nowadays that we accept. Earlier, it used to be just coin based,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is cash. So what do you see in terms of split percentages, like 50-50, or
I
where do you
see.
fall?
Look, I see the newer stores. We have 0 coins in our
Oh,
stores,
you have 0 coins?
0
Okay.
coins, and so we started our business. Well, okay. Before I say what we did, I want to also say, if you're watching YouTube and social media, so many people are talking about the laundromats, this great passive investment. It's a great passive income. Let me debunk that myth. This is not a passive income business, at least not what we're running. And I'm going to tell you, not at all in the laundromat business, because it is a business. It's a customer facing interactive business that needs attention. Now, could you go open a freestanding non-staff location? Yes. But what would happen with that is your equipment is going to break down a lot faster because you don't have people taking care of the equipment like we do with a fully staffed location. Your customers are not going to take care of things. Your customers are not going to come back because they're not being we train our employees to love on our customer. Our name is Laundry Luv, LUV. Like we train them to lead with love and love on our customers and take care of them. And so anyway, the social media phenomenon of this passive income is don't believe the hype. Let me say that. Now that I've framed that, I will say that we set up our business when we got into this as a remote first business, meaning I was in Fort Worth. One of my partners was in Colorado and the other was in Austin, Texas. And so we were in our stores were our first store was in Abilene, Texas, which is 2.5 hours away from Fort Worth, 2.5 hours away from Austin. So we set it up as a remote first store. And we had a full-time store manager that was on site on location there. So we had in our organization a person that was on site, and so we had him there. He's gone on. He's actually my partner's father, and he's gone on to be our first store manager, to our first regional manager, to our first facilities manager. We now have deemed him with the title of Minister of Love, because he really embodies everything we're about when it talks about taking care of clients. So anyway, I just say it's very much it's a business. It's not a hobby. It's a bit. Now, can you do it remote? Can you do it where you're uh, my advice to people, we've learned the hard way. Now, we put a lot of infrastructure in place. We put a lot of front end cost into place to do it like that. But like for our franchisees that we're getting in business, I'm going to tell you, hey, go look within a 45-minute radius of where you are. I guarantee within a 45-minute of most places in the U.S., you can find a great location that will work for a laundromat that will help. So that's kind of my advice is find some within 30 to 45 minutes where you are. Get your hands dirty the first 6 to 12 months of the business, working in it, learning all the systems, learning the processes. And we teach people, we literally give them a playbook to do that. But the operator needs to be doing that. And then you can transition that daily leadership and daily operation to great team members. You can train those team members side by side with you, transition that business to them.
Absolutely. And that's the reason I said earlier, right? A lot of people are sitting on the fence because they think it's passive, but then they go visit the laundromat and then they realize it's not passive and they are not sure what's going on because you hear this noise, passive laundromat, money making, ding, 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 ding. But then you go and do a site visit, you're like, something's wrong. So, okay. So let's go a little deeper into Laundry Luv. At a typical site location, I think we already said the site is looking at about what 3,500 to 4,000. That's what you want to do now.
Yep. 3,500, 4,500, kind of our ideal site. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So uh, to operate one location, what kind of how many employees do you need? So it seems like you need a store manager and then a couple other people.
Yeah. You store manager. And I say beyond that, probably 6 to a max of 10, but 6 to 10 part-time employees. And when I say 6 to 10, it's just depending on the hours that these people can work. And you want to have a bench. Always want to have a bench of folks that someone doesn't show up, someone quits, you need a bench. But if you had a full-time manager and 6 part-time employees, like we're generally open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. We're kind of testing hours that are a little expanded on that, but we're generally 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And so you need to staff people for that many hours per day, and watch staffing in and to make sure that you don't hit a bunch of overtime in there as well. And so that's why you want this mixture of your full-time manager and your part-time employees.
What are some of the key things that you said about maintaining if people, the laundromat, the zombie laundromat, the machines kind of wear out faster. So what are the key things that you ask your people? So of course I'm assuming they're mopping the floors, keeping it clean. So that's one side of the thing. But let's talk the equipment because a lot of that money, that investment is going into the equipment, like
Yeah.
70 to 80%. So how are you keeping your equipment like lasting longer versus maybe some other players?
Yeah, no, great question. And when it comes to our team members, it's like their top 2 jobs. Number one is kind of that whole lead with love thing I'm talking about. That's part of our core values, lead with love, meaning greeting customers, helping them with, again, I mentioned coinless. So helping them learn our card system, helping them learn how to use the machines and do that kind of thing, and just engaging with them, helping them bring their clothes in and out of the store. That's number one. Number two, exactly what you're saying. It's cleaning both the store and the equipment. And so everything, Ray, from cleaning the laundry input where the soap input and everything goes, like making sure that is constantly staying clean. There's cleaning seals and gaskets, okay, keeping things clean, making sure that nothing's getting stuck or left in these washers. So, and wiping them down so they look good, and then constantly looking and paying attention. Are there maintenance codes coming up? Things come up all the time? whether it's a clogged valve, it's some kind of electronical issue. It's something right there. And so we have I mentioned our first store manager that became our facilities manager. He kind of half his time is spent in updating and keeping the machines up to speed. Okay. But they're usually often they're small things. Like again, you got these valves that need to be changed from they get clogged for different reasons and things like that. And so we're staying on top. Now, if you don't do that, that becomes another issue, right? You keep running and do things, it compounds, becomes other issues. And so, but from our employee standpoint, and look, we've trained our employees. A lot of these things are somewhat simple issues. So we've now have a whole playbook. We've got a video library of how to do it. We have written instructions of how to do it as far as this basic equipment maintenance and upkeep.
In your total expenses per month, how much of that, or typically speaking, goes towards actual like repair costs towards this capital intensive business, like upkeeping of it? I was saying things will fail. I mean, you will
Oh,
have to have a service
100%.
call. Yeah, yeah. So how much of that kind of what's the fail ratio, or what's the average spend monthly on or yearly?
I can tell you in terms of like numbers of machines right now. So I'm tracking. We track all of our KPIs. Really, we use the EOS framework and model to run our business, and we track our KPIs. We review them weekly as a leadership team. And one of the things that's on our KPIs is number of machines that are down. Right, so we constantly got that number of machines down. And again, today it's across 3 different stores of corporate. Our KPI is if we're like 4 or less machines down across our 3 stores, then it's green. If it's 5 or more, it's red. It goes into that. So
You don't have a yellow.
yeah, well, we probably do have a yellow actually, but no. I think actually in EOS it's either green or red. Okay, in EOS it's green or red, and so five or more it's red, and so we're trying to keep that on a week to week basis. So, but it's very 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 uncommon that we show a 0. Okay, very uncommon that we show zero. Like all machines are up and working. There's something going on. But again, we have between 80 and 100 machines in our store. So let's call that roughly 300 machines. Something is going to be breaking and going down. And again, our full-time manager, I can tell you that we're allocating full-time facilities manager. So he's a facility across 3 stores. We're allocating about 50% of his hours into maintenance.
Yeah.
It's into the maintenance of the
But
machine.
have you tracked repair expense to these things?
Yeah. Well,
So
no, we have all that tracked. I don't have in front of me exactly what that.
okay.
No, but it's. I mean, if you're looking at it as a percentage of revenue, it's
Mhm.
maybe 3 to 5% and I'm again, I'm not looking at my numbers at the moment. So, but I do know we review P&Ls monthly, looking at it.
Let's say
We're
five
looking.
percent and give and take,
Yeah,
a few
we'll
percentage
call it like
basis. Yeah.
on a 5% of revenue done for, but that's staying on top of it. If you're in with an old store, we at one point bought an older store and it was a big mistake. We older equipment, older store, and that was very very different. Machines were always breaking, like a vast majority of machines with expensive deals, and that so if you're this is a warning to people, or just a heads up to folks going, hey, I want to buy this older laundromat. I got a great deal on it. Your maintenance cost on that may be dramatically higher because of older machines that need constant maintenance. Now, our machines are fairly new. They're between 6 years and 3 years old. And so we can keep that at a more attractive level. But if you go buy a machine that's 10, 15 years old, you're going to have a lot more expense costs in maintenance.
And let's talk payroll, because payroll is another big expense that kind of happens. So yeah, huge one, right? So yeah. So how much are you paying your typical store manager, and what's the typical wages for the part-time employees?
Yeah, wages are going to, it needs to be competitive with the market, right?
Yeah,
So, I
and
mean,
it has gone up.
it has gone up, and I think you're going to see it's going to continue to go up. But I mean, think of what your entry level employee would be making for to go anything from work at McDonald's or somewhere else. We need to be competitive with that. So it's going to depend on market, but in some markets that could be $10 to $12 an hour. In some markets that could be 18 to 20 an hour. Kind
Yeah.
of depend on market. Manager's going to make more than that. Manager's going to be full time. Manager's going to have some benefits.
Are they salaried?
Our managers, they're hourly plus benefit, but we've got full time with hourly plus benefits is what we have on our managers. And now, might we move to salary? We may. I'm. It's not me that's making those decisions and doing the HR in our company, but we currently we're full time hourly plus benefits.
Let's talk about site selections because you mentioned early on into your key mistakes with your first business that you bought. Site selection is the key part of it. Site selection, in fact, for this business as well, I think is equally important.
100%. In fact, I tell you, it's probably the most important part. So I not only say that, our lender, when we did our first laundromat, our lender told us, they said, Ken, he said they approved the whole deal very quickly, and I was just shocked by how quickly they were able to approve it, much faster than a normal bank. This is lender is a industry lender with the laundromat and car wash industry, and he said, Ken, he said, as much as we underwrite you as the borrower, which we do, we kind of look at your financials and underwrite you guys as the borrowers. We're underwriting the site itself. And if we've underwritten the site and we know it's a great site and we think you guys are capable operators, but we've underwritten the site, we know that if something happens with you and you're not, you die, you get busy with something else, you don't pay attention to the store, and you aren't running the store well, we can replace you with a strong operator because we know the site works, and we'll have our investment protected. Now, that makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
we're doing the same thing as a franchisor now, looking at franchisees. We're absolutely, I think that's one of our greatest strengths I have a number of really positive strengths, but one of them is all three of us co-founders have a deep real estate background, and each of us have 15 to 20 plus years of real estate background, and so we understand, and we've made mistakes. Look, the greatest form of knowledge, I think, comes from experience, and the greatest form of experience comes from making mistakes, and we've got lots of experience. Let's say that. So now, as we get in,
Let's talk about some key metrics here. What are some key metrics that you would say in terms of site selection?
um, we
What are you looking
need
for in your next site?
demographics. It's really important, and income demographics is one of the most important. So it's income below 50,000 or less household income. It's a certain number of renters. So if we have like 50% or more renters in a radius is going to be important. And then we're also looking at the total number of renters, total number of single family houses, so we've got a whole model we'll run this through, but it really gets into income, it gets into the number of renters. We're looking at around a site selection. It could be a number of renters, but if you've got a bunch of brand new Class A apartments, those are all going to generally have washer dryers in their facilities. But if you got a bunch of B and C older apartments built 20, 30 years ago, many of those don't. And if they have a laundry facility at all, it's going to be pretty less than desirable on their laundry facilities. I lived at one point in a really nice apartment complex, and they had like 3 washers and 3 dryers. I mean, they had hundreds of units there, and it was a really, if you didn't have it in your unit, you're kind of out of luck. So we're looking for older multifamily, and then co-tenancy. We're looking for the right kind of co-tenancy that has a similar. So whether that's Walmart's, certain grocery stores, plasma centers, um, dollar stores, et cetera. So we've got a whole model based on different co-tenants, income, demographics, and renters.
And how about because generally, typically, these kind of markets or the demographics that you have told me, right? If I go in there, drive by, you'll have competition. You have existing laundromats. It could be mom and pop stores, but that's competition.
Yeah.
So, how do you kind of factor that into your analysis to say, yeah, we got competition, but or no, we got a lot of competition. This is maybe not the right site for us.
It's
So
really important. Really, really important on that. And we, before we'll go into market, we do an actual site visit on every one of the competitors. We're kind of looking at all the aspects of their store. Are they staffed? Is their staff friendly? What's it like in there? What's it look like? What's it smell like? What's it feel like? What are their Google reviews? We're kind of what's their parking lot? What's their access like? We're looking at everything we look at for us, and we're going to look at each one of our competitors and say, okay, what do they have? And um, do we outposition them? Are we stronger? Are we a better operator? Are we if you got open up a really well run um, store, and also no one is doing, or very, very, very few people are doing what we're doing with taking care of the children that come in. It's that just doesn't happen. So we have we dedicate square footage in each one of our stores for children, for the play area. So that takes care of the parents, so the parents can do what they want to do. So we're looking at that. We want to see competitors in the market because there's demand with competitors. But if we have when we went into our first store in Abilene, we knew there were 8 different competitors in that market, but you know, several of them should have been shut down by the health department, to be quite honest, and they were still open. And then there were a few more that were, not so great. And then there was one that was okay and one that was really good. We're like, okay, we have one great competitor in there. And so we said, okay, we're willing to go against this one great competitor with all these other mediocre competitors and go compete. And that store has turned around and done quite well for us.
awesome. Well, Ken, I really appreciate a lot of this feedback on the laundry side. So I know you have been engaged into other aspect of real estate as well. So you want to share a quick bite on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the other part of that real estate is shopping centers that these laundromats could be located in. So we own some shopping centers that our laundromats are located in. Sometimes that comes with excess land, but for me, as far as personal ownership of those things, it's retail shopping centers that are laundromats to be located in. I've invested in a lot of different asset classes, but most times with a really good sponsor. I would say my advice on sponsors or getting involved with sponsors is, my biggest successes come with people that I've known for about 10 years or more. I've
Yeah.
seen how they operate. I've seen their integrity. I've seen their communication. I've seen a lot of things. And so if it's with, it doesn't always have to be an asset class, I understand, but it generally, like in multifamily, I understand it, but I'm not a multifamily guy. But yet I've invested with great multifamily operators and done well from investing with them. My, um, yeah, one of my worst investments, we'll see how it turns out, but it's not looking so great, is in a Bitcoin mine. I don't understand Bitcoin mines. I just don't. I could tell you, okay, I kind of in theory get what they do, but I really don't understand it and the economics of it, the things that can go right or wrong with them. And but I got FOMO, jumped into a Bitcoin mine when things were going on, and we'll see if we ever even get that money back, much less a return on it. So, but today, one of the things I love and am working on acquiring with some partners are um, flex office warehouse projects. And
Mhm.
I understand that, right? I understand the contractor warehouse, the mom and pop, the contractor warehouse, the small business that needs a little warehouse space, needs some office, some flexibility. I can understand, and so I'm getting involved in that with some partners as well.
Awesome. Awesome. What would be your one bigger life moment if you would think about that?
Being a dad, um,
Yeah.
hands down, that's being a dad is the true gift of my life. I have 3 kids. My daughter's 22, older son turns 21 next weekend and graduates college. It's a big weekend for us next weekend. And then we've got a 9-year-old little guy who's just the light of God. His smile is radiant. He's just beautiful and happy. And so for me, it's spending, getting to invest and be their guide, invest my time and wisdom to them, and getting to love on them. That's my bigger life moment.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Ken, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom and the insights of the Laundry Love also. and how to get into that business. Well, I'll recommend anybody who's thinking about laundromats, talk to Ken. He has seen all these ups and downs, not just from the laundry side, but also from the real estate side and from multiple other sides of it. So talk to Ken, see, just have a word with him, right? And see where it takes. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get connected with you, Ken?
Yeah, probably best way, if you go to kenwimberly.com, so KenWimberly.com, it has all my contact info on there. I'm on social media. I just not a lot, so I don't respond super a lot, but it's got all my other contact info on, and you can go to laundryluv.com. That's LUV.com. Learn about our laundromats and our Laundry Luv franchise. We got a little franchise button on there if you want to learn more about that. And then, yeah, if people want to connect with me, I'm happy to answer questions. There's a blog on my website at kenwimberly.com about site selection mistakes with a laundromat. So you want to learn about some things not to do, go read that blog.
All right, awesome, awesome. Well, thanks for joining the show, Ken. I appreciate your time.
Ray, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
And to our listeners, we'll be back next week with another podcast. Thank you.